listen, not all habits are created equally. You can put a ton of work into something for very little reward. But these are 5 habits that I implemented in 2024 that worked so well that I will be carrying them forward into 2025. I'm also going to mention one habit that I will be leaving behind. Thank you very much. Let's go. Hey, how's it going? It's Laura, and we all know that the habits we build today create the life we live tomorrow. But like I said, they're not all created equally. So while you are reflecting and starting to think about some habits you might like to adopt in 2025, here are the ones that made a meaningful difference in my life. So at the beginning of the year, I was struggling with depression, and this first habit was born out of that. My husband and I started doing weekly marriage meetings. So at the end of every week we sit down and we ask, what went well, what could be improved, and then we go online and search for, those like list of questions to get to know your partner better, or to get to know someone better. And we choose one of those at random. Sometimes they are just silly, lighthearted ones. Sometimes they're a little bit more serious. These meetings were a little bit more difficult back in the beginning because, like I said, I was going through depression. So we were covering some pretty serious stuff, some more in-depth, deeper topics. So yeah, that was a little bit hard in the beginning. I will come back to that a little bit later on in the video, but yeah, just like the more serious topics initially. Now though, they are pretty quick and informal. They're pretty fun. I actually look forward to them every week. Not quite as serious, but still important. Something I'm not great about is giving praise. I'm really quick to judge. I'm not great at expressing gratitude or saying thank you. So when we start off by asking what went well, I take that as an opportunity to tell my husband all the things he did that week that I really appreciated. And he does the same for me, just warm, fuzzy feelings all round. Then for the improvement section, this is a great time to kind of just bring up any issues in a more kind of balanced or neutral way. No one feels attacked. I don't let things fester, which I have a tendency to do. I don't let resentment build up. I don't spend my time quietly seething. Instead, we have a mature discussion about it, and then we try and work on that thing for the coming week. And sometimes it's not even kind of like a marriage specific thing. Like sometimes one of us might just say that we need extra help with something that week. So for example, my husband, it's like busy period in work for him. So he's doing a lot of late nights. So he just said that it would be really helpful if I could do some more of the school runs in the morning so that he could lie in and have a chance to catch up on some sleep. It's a way to just strengthen even just ourselves individually so that we can have a stronger marriage. And then the random questions section, that's always a fun one. Me and my husband have been together for 20 years now, and I am still learning new things about him through these questions. It has been eye-opening. Some of them are just silly things. I would say actually that this has strengthened our friendship more than anything, but the friendship is the foundation of our marriage. If you are in a relationship, I highly recommend this habit. It is a small investment of time. It's kind of like a date night every week, but you don't have to bother getting dressed up all fancy or leaving the house or spending money or anything like that. Small investment of time, but a big payoff. The next habit then is one that I didn't even realize how much this had impacted me until I skipped it for about a week, and then I felt the loss of it. Listen, I'm not a morning person. Okay, my old routine was just rolling out of bed after scrolling on my phone for about half an hour and then just walking the dogs, hoping the fresh air would help me feel a little bit more awake. But this year I decided to change that. I have never been able to stick to an exercise routine, like a big exercise routine, because it's just so much work. This time I wanted something sustainable, particularly because I was turning 40. I turned 40 earlier this year, and I was seeing a lot of stuff online about people in their 40s and turning 40. Like the algorithm just knows me, it knows how old I am. And every single thing that I saw said that one of the most important things that you need to do in your 40s is to have some form of at least stretching routine, but preferably also some strength training. It was all like, basically, if you're not doing this now, there's no hope for you. So I figured, okay, something is better than nothing. I started small and I continued small. So I do 10 minutes of very light, gentle exercise, like strength training exercise with little hand weights. I do 10 minutes of basically stretching. I found a 10-minute yoga video, very gentle stretching online, so I follow that. And then I meditate kind of for as long as the mood takes me. Usually kind of like 15 to 20 minutes. It's not a lot in terms of exercise, but it is still something. And like I said, I didn't realize how much I was getting out of this until I stopped doing it. So we went home to Ireland for a week and I came back, I was trying to get back into it. And that's when I noticed how difficult it was to get back into it. I hadn't noticed how strong it was making me, how much more stamina it was giving me, until I stopped doing it and had to try and get back to that level. But knowing that it only takes a few minutes is basically a no-brainer for me. So if you've been thinking about starting a wellness routine and you maybe struggled with this in the past, my advice to you is to keep it short, keep it simple, and pick something that you actually enjoy, or at least something that you don't completely despise. It is amazing what just a few minutes can do for you. Even if you don't feel it in the moment, I guarantee that you are reaping more rewards than you realize. Now, I tried and failed at this next one so many times in the past. It just seemed like too much work. It's a lot of work. But this year, I cracked the code, and surprise, surprise, it involved keeping things simple, focusing on what works for me. This is the first year I have ever been able to make meal planning stick. So here's how I did it. I started by compiling a list of meals that we all like to eat. That in and of itself was a task. I noted, I paid particular attention to the ones that would give us leftovers, and then I slotted them all into the meal planning section of my digital planner, and we just rotate through. So here's the thing, between leftovers and what I like to call fend for yourself meals, these are the like quick and easy ones where you either eat some leftovers or you just grab something from the freezer. So like chicken tenders and frozen veg is my go-to quick and easy meal. But yeah, with all that, we actually don't need to cook all that many meals for a month, like certainly nowhere near 30. It has taken away the daily headache that is what's for dinner, who's cooking dinner. Plus, it saves us so much time and money, because I'm not going to the store now and just grabbing a bunch of like whatever, hoping that I'll be able to make some meals out of it. No, I get exactly what I need and I get out. And best of all, it helped me realize that I only needed to cook one dinner a week. Okay, my husband enjoys cooking way more than I do, and he is way better at it. Like, he can just whip something up. Okay, that is not me. I cannot do that. I am not that person. So between leftovers and those fend for yourself meals, and with him cooking like maybe 2 or 3 dinners a week, that only left one evening for me to have to do it. It is great. I feel like a huge weight has been lifted, because it's just one of those chores that I do not like to do. Right up there with dusting. Ugh. So if you are struggling with this, start by building a list as you notice like what your family's favorite meals are. Highlight the ones that will give you leftovers, so you can sprinkle those in liberally throughout the month or whatever. Decide how often you are willing to repeat meals, because for some people they don't mind repeating meals every week. For other people they need a month, other people need much longer. And then slot them in on some form of template or whatever timeline works best for you and your family. Then you just rotate through them. Have as many leftover and fend for yourself meals as you can in between all the cooking, and it's going to make the whole thing easy peasy. Well, this next habit started pretty much by accident. I had some overripe bananas lying around and I was sick of having some overripe bananas lying around. I'm one of these people who I like them to be just barely ripe, not even tinged with green. That is my preference. So anything beyond that I consider overripe. Anyway, I had heard lots of people say that when they have overripe bananas, they use them to make banana bread. So because I was sick of throwing out bananas, I figured randomly one day I would just look up a recipe. Lo and behold, the recipe required 3 bananas. I had exactly 3 bananas. So I gave it a go, whipped up a banana bread, and it was delicious. To my utter shock, it actually turned out well because I cannot cook and I do not like to cook. So I always just assumed that I couldn't bake. And that one decision not to throw out those bananas and make some banana bread became the gateway drug to a new hobby. It sounds strange, okay, but I have kind of been wanting a thing for a while. I just wanted a new hobby that I could immerse myself in. There are plenty of things that I like to do. I like reading, I like doing jigsaw puzzles, but they all felt very passive to me. I wanted something like a little bit more exciting, a little bit more action involved. I just wanted a thing. And some of it was midlife crisis stuff. Coming up on 40, I was just having that midlife crisis. I wanted to shake things up and kind of reinvent myself a little bit. I even went and got myself a motorcycle license. Well, don't ask, long story. But then a friend of mine gave me some of her sourdough starter and it all just escalated from there. I am now one of those women who bakes their own bread. I never thought I would see the day. I barely recognize myself anymore. But it is deeply rewarding to take a few ingredients, mix them together and produce something delicious, something that my family loves. It's the closest I'm ever going to get to performing actual magic. Particularly because I don't like to cook, this is a way that I can still provide food for my family. I'm very much an acts of service person. But I have to say, for me, baking isn't just about the food. Baking became this way of me reclaiming my capability and my independence, proving to myself that I could do things and I could contribute in a positive way to the household. Because again, like I said, I struggled with depression at the beginning of the year. So baking became this way for me to feel like I was getting back on track. I was able to do things again. I was able to make that contribution. I felt like, having gone through the midlife crisis and feeling like my best years were behind me, I suddenly, baking gave me this way of feeling like I could still learn new things. I could still create wonderful things. I could still contribute and I could still bring joy into my home. So yeah, baking became this big thing, this big kind of metaphorical thing. But the most recent thing that I learned to bake was gingerbread cookies for the season that's in it. And my daughter declared that they are too good because she can't stop eating them. Also, sometimes I'll give her some banana bread to bring as a snack to school, and I always have to give her extra because her friends eat it too because they also love it. And all of my neighbors have benefited. At some point they have got bread or muffins or something from me. So yeah, here I am, brightening up the world, one baked good at a time. I think 2025 will be the year of the macaron. That's what I want to try and tackle next. Now this next one might be a bit controversial, but hear me out. I am someone who gets really bogged down in details. Okay, very much a detail-oriented person. I find it really difficult to step back and see the big picture. My husband is the opposite. Okay, very much a big thinker, not so much with the fine print. But I cannot see, how different things tie together. I find it really hard to spot patterns. But that's something that I really wanted to do recently because I wanted to do a life audit. Oh, which reminds me, I'm going to be running a life audit workshop at the beginning of January. If you're interested in that, I'm going to leave the information, like the details, in the description box. But 40 was a big birthday for me, like particularly because it was on the back of depression. So I really wanted to make my 40s just magical. I was determined. And so 6 months in, I wanted to get a good grasp on how things were going, like what was going well, what maybe needed improving. But I knew I was going to struggle with that bird's eye view because it just does not come naturally to me. That is when AI entered the chat GPT. I hopped on ChatGPT and I told it to act like my best friend, my therapist, and my life coach all rolled into one. And I asked it to help me to identify patterns, to spot what was working, to tell me, where I might need to improve, and overall just to give me a good idea of the trajectory I was on. So to do this, I went back over all of my journal entries and I just kind of like fed it the memorable moments, the tough times, lessons that I had learned, etc. Anything that was kind of like over and above my normal everyday routine. And it was actually incredible at helping me to put all of the puzzle pieces together. Let me give you an example of something that ChatGPT spotted that I never in a bajillion years would have. Like, I never would have thought of this, but AI did. It spotted it, it spat it out, and I have been reaping the rewards ever since. So I'm an introvert, okay? Socially anxious and awkward, and generally avoid people like the plague. So color me surprised when ChatGPT came back and was like, you clearly enjoy social interactions. I was like, excuse me? Have you met me? But it had noticed that a lot of my most heartwarming moments came from little interactions with strangers. So like when I was out at the supermarket or out walking the dog. And it suggested that I do more of that. I never would have noticed that, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense, because those little conversations, those quick conversations with strangers are just very low stakes. There's like no pressure to maintain a conversation. I'm not really worried about what they think of me. It's a quick and wholesome interaction. Okay, like that dad that I locked eyes with when he was shopping for school supplies with his son, who was being less than helpful, and we just shared a little giggle. Like, it was just a little moment of parent solidarity. It was lovely, and I've actually had lots of little moments like that. So since ChatGPT pointed that out, I have been making more of an effort to have these little micro interactions with strangers. And it's actually brought me a lot of joy. It's given me a little bit more like social connection, something I never thought, as an extreme introvert, I never thought I would have that. And it's ever so slightly restored my faith in humanity. Look, I know AI is controversial, but I think it's like anything. It is going to be a personal decision for you about whether or not you engage with it or how you engage with it. It's kind of like social media. You can use it to your benefit, but you have to weigh up the pros and the cons for you. You have to make that decision for yourself. I am trying to use it in a very intentional way, a way that makes my life better. And it definitely did that for me this year. Okay, let's talk about what I am leaving behind in 2024. Okay, so for context, I am a people pleaser, just like going along with what everyone else is doing or saying, not really doing what I want, not pushing back on certain things, not asking the tough questions or having the difficult conversations, just going along with things for the sake of keeping the peace. I mean, not always. I know there are some people out there who have seen me be forceful with my opinions. I know who you are and I know why you think that, but those were exceptions, okay? Exceptional circumstances. But I have also struggled with depression, and I'm sure there's probably some like correlation or crossover there. So I mentioned how I had gone through an episode of that at the beginning of the year, and it was bad, and it forced me to change. And I think every episode of depression has forced me to change in some way, but it's one of those things where when you are kind of coming out the other side of depression, when you start to feel a little bit of energy or hope again, that is when you have to start fighting tooth and nail. And very often, like for a lot of people, they are literally fighting for their lives. I have always suffered from depression in silence. I have always just kind of slowly retreated away from the world. There's a huge part of me that does not want to be a burden to other people or to feel like, you know, this is my problem, so I have to deal with it. I have to fix it. But this year was different because this year came with a lot of anger. I was just fed up. And I think part of it was that I was about to turn 40 and I just kind of felt a little bit more confident, a little bit more bold, brave, brazen. And I just thought, you know, I'm not going through this nonsense. I'm just fed up. I am too old for this. Not that depression has like an age limit or anything, but I just mentally, I was like, no, I am done with this. So I started communicating with a therapist, with my husband, with myself. I got really open and honest and direct about what I needed, what I wanted. I had to prioritize myself and my health. So whereas before I didn't want to be a burden, this time I was like, no, this is what I need for me to feel better. Not in a horrible way, like, but just in a very matter-of-fact way. And so if anything good came out of depression, apart from the weekly marriage meetings, they're also great, but it was learning to better communicate, learning to speak up instead of slowly letting things eat away at me. So I am leaving behind silence, suffering in silence. I'm leaving behind a lack of communication. If you are someone who struggles with this too, let this be the year that you start speaking up too, because you deserve to have your needs met. You deserve to be supported and loved. You deserve to be heard and understood. Do you have a habit that you're planning to take into 2025? Or maybe one that you're leaving behind? Let me know. And like I said, if you're curious about doing a life audit, you can join my upcoming workshop. It is going to be a deep dive into creating a roadmap for your best year yet. Until next time, go raibh míle maith agaibh, agus feici mé sibh go luath. Slán!